My name is Jonathan Michaels, a man once deeply skeptical of spiritual experiences, particularly those involving life after death. I was raised in a suburban town in Texas, where faith was a central theme in my family's life. My parents were devout Christians, and our household revolved around church services, Bible studies, and missionary trips. Yet, like many young people, I found myself questioning the truths I had been taught. By the time I reached my 20s, I had dismissed much of what I learned as mere myth. Little did I know that one day, I would find myself captivated by accounts of people who had reportedly glimpsed both heaven and hell during near-death experiences and NDEs. It all began when I stumbled upon a story about a man who claimed to have seen the gates of heaven before being pulled into the fiery depths of hell. His account was chilling, vivid, and oddly persuasive. Intrigued, I began researching other stories, wondering if these experiences might hold some truth. What struck me was not just the consistency of these accounts, but the profound transformations they often triggered in the individuals who experienced them. These were people from all walks of life, atheists, believers, and everything in between, who returned with messages that seemed eerily aligned. My journey into these narratives became a personal mission. As I delved deeper, I encountered stories of people who claimed to have stood in the presence of God, surrounded by unexplainable peace and light. Others recounted harrowing experiences of torment, regret, and separation from the divine, their descriptions of hell both terrifying and sobering. These accounts forced me to confront my own beliefs about eternity and question whether I had been too quick to dismiss the spiritual realm. In this journey, I found that these experiences weren't just isolated to modern times. Ancient texts, scriptures, and even folklore from different cultures contained similar themes of celestial rewards and infernal punishment. Whether it was the biblical accounts of prophets like Isaiah or Ezekiel, or modern stories shared on forums and in books, the parallels were striking. Could it be that humanity, across time and geography, has been given glimpses of what lies beyond? One of the first accounts that truly gripped me was of a woman named Gloria, who described walking in a garden of unearthly beauty before being shown a chasm of despair. Gloria's life before her experience was marked by bitterness and anger, but her return to this world saw her transformed into a beacon of forgiveness and love. She spoke not only of the glory of heaven, but also of the horrors of hell, and her story became a reminder that our choices in this life echo into eternity. Another unforgettable story was that of Alex, a man who had spent most of his life rejecting the idea of God. In his NDE, he described being welcomed into a realm of indescribable light, but was soon taken to a dark, suffocating place when his pride and selfishness were revealed. Alex's account left me questioning how even good deeds, when rooted in ego, might lead us astray. His story was a wake-up call to reevaluate my own intentions and priorities. These accounts aren't without controversy. Critics often dismiss NDEs as hallucinations, the brain's final desperate act in the face of death. Yet, there's something about the coherence of these stories and the profound changes they bring about in people's lives that defies simple explanation. How does one explain the blind man who sees during his NDE, or the child who recounts events they could not have known? For me, the turning point was meeting a man named Samuel at a seminar on spiritual encounters. Samuel had experienced clinical death following a car accident and came back with vivid descriptions of both heaven and hell. His testimony was raw, emotional, and deeply personal. It wasn't just what he saw, but the way it changed him. A once selfish man turned into a selfless advocate for love and humility. As I pieced together these stories, I noticed patterns. Those who claimed to see heaven often described a presence so overwhelming and loving that words failed them. It wasn't just the beauty of the place, but the undeniable sense of belonging, of being truly home. On the other hand, Those who recounted journeys to hell spoke of regret, isolation, and a profound longing for the light they had once taken for granted. What fascinated me most was how these experiences transcended religious boundaries. While many NDEs came from Christians, others came from individuals of different faiths or none at all. Their descriptions often aligned, pointing to universal truths about love, accountability, and the eternal consequences of our actions. Through this exploration, I've come to realize that these stories are more than just personal anecdotes. They are messages to humanity, warnings and invitations wrapped in the language of the supernatural. They remind us that life is fleeting, and our choices carry weight beyond what we can comprehend. This brings us to the content I want to share with you today. The stories of 10 individuals who claim to have visited both heaven and hell. These accounts aren't just tales of the afterlife. They are mirrors reflecting our own lives, challenging us to consider where we might be headed. The first account comes from a preacher who spent years leading others to God but found himself in hell due to hidden hypocrisy. His story is a sobering reminder that no one is beyond accountability. The second comes from a philanthropist whose good deeds were tainted by a desire for recognition rather than true compassion. As we journey through these stories, I encourage you to keep an open mind. Whether you see these accounts as metaphors, spiritual truths, or simple hallucinations, they carry lessons that can inspire us to live better, more intentional lives. Each of these stories offers a unique perspective on the afterlife, but they all share one common thread: the transformative power of love, repentance, and humility. These accounts call us to examine our own hearts and lives, to seek truth and light in a world often shrouded in darkness. In sharing these stories, my hope is not to instill fear, but to spark reflection. What would you see if you stood at the threshold of eternity today? Would you be ready to face the truths of your life, or would regret and missed opportunities weigh you down? So, as we dive into these incredible testimonies, let us do so with an open heart and a willingness to learn. These aren't just stories about heaven and hell. They are stories about us, our choices, and the legacy we leave behind. Prepare yourself for an eye-opening journey into the unknown, one that might just change the way you see your own life. Let's begin. The first story I encountered in my research was that of Dr. Mary Neal, a spinal surgeon whose near-death experience is one of the most well-documented. Following a kayaking accident in Chile, Mary described being enveloped in a realm of light and love. She saw celestial beings and experienced what she called the overwhelming presence of God. However, she also described a darker vision of souls in torment, separated from divine love due to their choices. Mary's return to life carried a clear message. Love and faith are not just beliefs, but guiding principles for humanity. Then there was the account of Howard Storm, an atheist professor whose encounter with the afterlife shocked him to the core. During a medical emergency, Howard found himself in a bleak, oppressive void. He recalled being mocked and attacked by dark entities, a symbolic manifestation of his inner spiritual desolation. Yet, his cries for help brought him into the presence of Jesus. Storm's experience didn't just reaffirm his faith, it reshaped his life, transforming him into a minister and vocal advocate for spiritual awareness. The story of Don Piper is equally compelling. Don, a pastor, was declared dead after a horrific car accident, yet he claims to have spent 90 minutes in heaven. His vivid descriptions of unearthly music, vibrant colors, and the profound peace he experienced captivated millions. Don's story highlights the reality of heaven for believers, but his return to earth also emphasizes a sobering truth. Life is not finished until God's purpose for you is complete. Contrast this with the haunting experience of Bill Weese, whose vision of hell is one of the most harrowing accounts I've ever encountered. Bill claimed to have been transported to hell for 23 minutes, where he experienced unimaginable torment and the absence of God's love. His description of the sulfurous air, deafening screams, and relentless despair paints a vivid picture of hell as a place of eternal regret for those who reject salvation. Bill's account serves as both a warning and a call to action for those wavering in their faith. Then there's the incredible story of Crystal McVie, who describes being welcomed into heaven after her heart stopped during a medical procedure. Crystal's testimony focuses not just on the beauty of heaven, but on the overwhelming love and forgiveness she experienced. Her return to earth came with a clear mission: to share the truth of God's grace and encourage others to live lives of purpose and love. One of the most surprising accounts I encountered was from Matthew Botsford, who was shot outside a bar and clinically dead for several minutes. Matthew claims to have seen hell, a place of complete darkness, isolation, and terror. He describes being saved at the last moment by a hand pulling him upward, which he believes was God intervening to give him a second chance. Today, Matthew shares his story as a cautionary tale and a testament to God's mercy. I also read about a young boy named Colton Burpo, whose story became the basis for the book Heaven is for Real. Colton, just 4 years old at the time, described meeting Jesus and seeing deceased family members during a near-death experience. While his account was filled with childlike wonder, it carried profound spiritual truths that resonated with millions. Colton's story serves as a reminder that even the youngest among us can have deeply spiritual experiences. Another unforgettable account is that of Betty Eady, whose near-death experience took her to a realm of indescribable love and light. Betty describes meeting Jesus and being shown the interconnectedness of all life. Her experience emphasized the importance of love and kindness, but also included a sobering warning about humanity's tendency towards selfishness and destruction. One of the most fascinating stories comes from a man named Ian McCormick, a surfer stung by a jellyfish and clinically dead for several minutes. Ian describes being in a dark void before seeing a light and being welcomed into heaven. However, his journey also took him to the edges of hell, where he felt the despair of separation from God. Ian's story is a powerful example of the choices we make and their eternal consequences. The story of Pastor Jesse Duplantis stands out for its detailed account of a heavenly journey. Jesse describes being taken to heaven and walking in the streets of gold, meeting biblical figures, and experiencing the glory of God. His testimony is filled with hope and a renewed sense of mission to bring others to Christ. Each of these individuals' accounts carries unique insights, yet they all converge on common themes of love, accountability, and transformation. The consistency of their experiences, despite differences in background, culture, and beliefs, challenges us to consider the reality of heaven and hell. One recurring theme in these stories is the idea of divine justice. Those who visited hell often speak of it as a place where people face the consequences of their choices, not because God is unloving, but because He honors free will. Similarly, those who visited heaven describe it as a place of overwhelming love and peace, a reward for lives lived in alignment with divine principles. Another important aspect is the transformative power of these experiences. Many of the individuals who experienced heaven or hell returned to life with a renewed sense of purpose. They often became advocates for love, forgiveness, and faith, using their stories to inspire others to make better choices. These stories also challenge us to think about what truly matters in life. Material wealth, status, and power are meaningless in the afterlife. What remains are the choices we make, the love we share, and the faith we hold. The accounts also serve as reminders of the brevity of life. None of us knows when our time will come, and these stories encourage us to live each day with intention and gratitude. Another key takeaway is the importance of repentance. Many of those who visited hell spoke of it as a place of regret, where people wished they had made different choices. Their stories remind us of the importance of seeking forgiveness and striving to live in alignment with God's will. The stories also highlight the power of God's grace. Even those who found themselves in hell often described being saved by a cry for help or an act of divine intervention. This serves as a reminder that it is never too late to turn to God and seek His forgiveness. These accounts also emphasize the interconnectedness of humanity. Many of those who visited heaven spoke of feeling a deep sense of unity and love for all people. This challenges us to let go of division and strive for compassion and understanding. The experiences also encourage us to let go of fear. Those who visited heaven often described feeling completely at peace, free from fear and anxiety. This serves as a reminder that faith can provide us with strength and courage in the face of life's challenges. As we reflect on these stories, we are reminded of the importance of sharing our faith. Many of those who experience heaven or hell felt a strong calling to share their stories and inspire others to seek God. This challenges us to be bold in sharing our beliefs and encouraging others to live lives of love and purpose. These accounts also remind us of the power of prayer. Many of those who experienced hell described being saved by the prayers of loved ones. This serves as a reminder of the importance of praying for others and interceding on their behalf. Finally, these stories challenge us to live with an eternal perspective. It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and forget what truly matters. These accounts remind us to focus on the things that have eternal significance, love, faith, and the legacy we leave behind. The testimonies shared in the accounts of heaven and hell consistently underscore the stark contrast between the two realms. Those who experienced heaven describe a realm suffused with divine love, peace, and light, a place where every question is answered, every wound is healed, and the presence of God is undeniable. These experiences bring hope and reassurance that heaven is a reality awaiting those who embrace faith and righteousness. On the other hand, descriptions of hell are chilling and visceral, filled with imagery of despair, isolation, and torment. The suffering in hell is often described as self-inflicted, a reflection of the choices made during one's lifetime and a rejection of divine grace. These stories serve as a stark reminder of the consequences of turning away from God's will and the importance of repentance. These accounts are not just about the afterlife, but also about transformation in this life. Many individuals who shared their experiences described how their lives changed dramatically afterward. They found renewed purpose, deepened faith, and an unshakable commitment to living in alignment with divine principles. Their stories challenge us to examine our own lives and ask whether we are living in a way that reflects love, compassion, and faith. In addition to inspiring personal reflection, these experiences also highlight the importance of community and connection. Several individuals described being greeted in heaven by loved ones who had passed on, reinforcing the idea that our relationships have eternal significance. This serves as a powerful reminder to prioritize love and kindness in our interactions with others. Moreover, these stories remind us of the power of choice. Each day presents an opportunity to align ourselves with God's will or to stray from it. The accounts of heaven and hell emphasize that the choices we make in this life have eternal consequences, urging us to choose wisely and intentionally. The testimonies emphasize the reality of both divine reward and judgment, urging us to live lives of intentionality, humility, and faith. For those who visited heaven, the accounts illustrate an indescribable bliss that serves as a promise of what lies ahead for those who remain faithful to God. These vivid descriptions of peace, love, and joy ignite a longing for righteousness and deepen the understanding of God's boundless grace and mercy. Conversely, the vivid and unsettling experiences of hell act as a wake-up call for those who may have strayed or become complacent in their spiritual lives. The descriptions of torment, regret, and isolation confront listeners with the gravity of life's moral and spiritual choices. Hell is portrayed not merely as a punishment, but as the ultimate consequence of rejecting God's truth and love. These accounts highlight the importance of repentance. They remind us that no matter how far we may have drifted, the opportunity for forgiveness and redemption remains open. The narrators often describe their experiences as second chances, granted so they could share the urgent message of salvation with others. The stories also underline the power of faith and obedience. Many narrators recount moments in their lives when they ignored spiritual warnings or clung to worldly desires, only to face the consequences later. These lessons challenge us to evaluate our priorities and ensure that our lives reflect our values and faith. Another recurring theme is the significance of sharing these stories as a testimony to the world. The narrators often feel compelled to speak out, risking skepticism and ridicule, because they believe their experiences carry a divine mandate to save others. Their courage inspires us to share our own faith journeys, no matter how imperfect, as a way of drawing others closer to God. Additionally, these accounts emphasize the necessity of spiritual vigilance. They remind us that the path to heaven is not easy, and that temptations, distractions, and spiritual battles are a constant reality. Yet, they also affirm that with God's guidance and grace, it is possible to overcome. The conclusion calls for unity within the Christian community. It highlights the need to support one another in faith, share the gospel fearlessly, and intercede for those who are lost or struggling. These stories remind us that our actions have eternal implications not just for ourselves, but also for others around us. Finally, the narrators often express a profound sense of gratitude for their second chance at life and faith. They encourage us to live each day with purpose, aligning our actions with God's will and seeking His presence in all we do. Their testimonies are both a warning and an invitation to choose life, light, and love over darkness and despair. As you reflect on these powerful accounts, consider the state of your own heart and faith. Take this as a moment to reconnect with God, seek forgiveness where needed, and reaffirm your commitment to living a life that honors Him. These stories remind us that heaven and hell are real, and that every decision we make carries eternal weight. Let this be a call to action, to strive for holiness, to love unconditionally, to share the message of salvation, and to encourage others to walk in faith. Together, let us heed these warnings and embrace the hope that lies in God's eternal promises.